Christmas Eve had a way of making loneliness louder, and for Michael Carter, it screamed through the frozen streets of Cleveland, Ohio, like a siren he could not turn off. The city glittered with lights and laughter, but for Michael, every decoration felt like a reminder of what was missing. As he locked the door of his aging sedan after a long shift at the warehouse, he noticed something that stopped him cold. Under the pale glow of a flickering street lamp, a small girl was digging through a row of overflowing trash bags behind a grocery store, her hands red from the cold, her movements careful and desperate. On a night meant for miracles, the sight felt like a wound opening in his chest. If you believe that kindness can change lives, that second chances are real, and that even the smallest act can create a miracle, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart. Michael was a single father who had learned how to survive, not how to celebrate. 3 years earlier, his wife Rebecca had died after a sudden illness, leaving him alone to raise their young son, Noah. Since then, life had become a cycle of work, exhaustion, and guilt. He worked double shifts to keep food on the table, missed school events, and fell asleep every night promising himself he would do better tomorrow. Christmas Eve only made those promises heavier. He had just enough money for a small gift for Noah, wrapped in yesterday's newspaper, and even that felt like a failure compared to the joy he wished he could give his child. Seeing the little girl by the trash shattered the fragile wall he had built around his emotions. She looked no older than 7, wearing a thin pink jacket that was too small and sneakers with cracked soles. Her hair was tied back with a frayed ribbon, and her face showed a focus that no child should ever have to learn. Michael stood there, torn between fear and responsibility, knowing the world was not kind and that approaching a child alone could bring trouble. But something deeper than logic pushed him forward. He had been a father long enough to recognize hunger, not just of the body, but of the soul. As he moved closer, he noticed she was not searching for food alone. She carefully pulled out discarded boxes, torn wrapping paper, and broken toys, examining each piece as if it held value. The wind cut through the alley, and snowflakes began to fall, settling on her shoulders like silent witnesses. Michael felt anger rise in him, not at the girl, but at a world that allowed this to happen while others sat warm by fireplaces. The little girl finally looked up, her eyes wide with surprise but not fear. There was something hauntingly calm in her expression, as if life had already taught her not to expect help. Michael gestured gently toward the store entrance, trying to communicate safety without words, but she hesitated. After a long moment, she pointed toward a nearby rundown apartment building, barely visible beyond the alley. Understanding came slowly, and Michael realized she was not lost. She was surviving. Michael decided to follow from a distance, keeping his movements slow, letting her lead. The building she approached looked abandoned, with broken windows patched by cardboard and a stairwell dimly lit by a single bulb. The smell of damp concrete and old paint hung in the air. As she slipped inside, Michael felt his heart pound. Every instinct told him to turn back, but another part of him, the part that still believed in doing the right thing, urged him forward. Inside the stairwell, he saw the truth unfold in quiet devastation. On the 3rd floor, the girl entered a small apartment where the door barely closed behind her. Through the cracked opening, Michael saw a sight that left him stunned. A woman lay on a thin mattress on the floor, pale and unmoving, wrapped in a worn blanket. Medical supplies sat neatly arranged nearby, and the room was almost empty, save for a small plastic Christmas tree missing most of its branches. The realization hit Michael like a blow. The girl was not scavenging for herself. She was searching for anything she could sell or reuse to care for her mother, Sarah Thompson, who was clearly ill. There was no electricity, no decorations, no sign of help. Just a child carrying a burden far too heavy for her small shoulders. Memories flooded Michael's mind, memories of Rebecca in her final weeks, of Noah asking why his mother would not wake up, of hospital bills stacked higher than hope. He understood this pain too well. The girl moved with practiced efficiency, placing her finds in a corner, then kneeling beside her mother to adjust the blanket. There was love in every movement, silent and fierce. Michael did not rush in. He knew that dignity mattered, even in desperation. He stepped back, called emergency services from his phone, and waited. When help arrived, it came with flashing lights and hurried footsteps, breaking the stillness of the night. Paramedics carried Sarah out carefully, while social workers wrapped the little girl in a warm blanket. Snow continued to fall, but the alley no longer felt as cold. The days that followed changed everything. Michael could not forget the girl, whose name he learned was Hannah. He visited the hospital, bringing small gifts and food, telling himself it was just a check on them. Sarah's illness was severe but treatable, and the doctors believed she had a chance, thanks to timely intervention. The relief on Hannah's face when she saw her mother awake was something Michael would carry in his heart forever. What started as a simple act of concern became a bond forged by shared pain and understanding. Michael helped connect Sarah with local charities, churches, and housing assistance programs. He brought Noah along, teaching his son through action what compassion looked like. Slowly, light returned to places that had been dark for too long. On Christmas morning, Michael's small apartment felt fuller than it ever had. There were mismatched ornaments, donated gifts, and a shared meal that tasted richer than any feast he remembered. Hannah laughed for the first time since Michael had known her, and Noah learned that giving could feel just as magical as receiving. Michael realized that his own wounds had begun to heal, not because life became easy, but because he chose to open his heart again as the year turned. Sarah regained strength, Hannah returned to school, and Michael discovered that family was not only defined by blood, but by the willingness to stand together when the world fell apart. The image of a little girl searching through trash on Christmas Eve no longer haunted him. Instead, it reminded him of how close despair and hope could stand, separated only by the courage to care. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness still matters in a world that often feels cold, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to the channel to keep these stories alive. Before this story ends, leave a comment below telling us what kindness means to you or how one small act changed your life. On that Christmas Eve, Michael thought he was witnessing tragedy, but what he truly saw was the beginning of redemption. A single father, a little girl, and a broken family found their way back to hope, proving that even in the darkest nights, love can still find a way to shine.